Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we dive into a story that is bigger than politics, bigger than borders, and bigger than any crisis Iran has ever faced. This is the story of Tehran's water collapse, how a city of more than 10 million people went from flowing rivers to empty taps, dying lakes, dead reservoirs, and dust storms replacing the winds that once carried life. What you're about to hear is not fiction. It's a combination of decades of mistakes, climate disasters, political pressure, and one critical truth. Tehran is now standing right on the edge of water extinction. For years, people warned that Iran's water crisis was coming. Experts pleaded, activists protested, farmers shouted, and climatologists raised alarm bells. But nobody imagined a collapse this fast. No one believed that major rivers like the Zay Rud would dry into sand. No one thought Lake Urmia, once the Middle East's largest lake, would shrink by 90%. And no one expected that Tehran, a city built on ancient water channels called qanats that fed civilizations, would eventually face a nightmare where those same channels turned into empty tunnels of dust. Tehran didn't end up here overnight. This disaster was built slowly, silently, and steadily. It began with population pressure as millions moved into Tehran from rural provinces for jobs, safety, and stability. More people meant more water demand, but the system didn't expand with it. The same old pipes, the same old wells, the same outdated infrastructure kept trying to serve a city that was now 5 times larger than what engineers originally planned for. Every year water levels dropped a little more. Every year demand grew higher, and every year the warning signs were ignored. Then came agriculture. Iran used 90% of its water for farming, even in deserts where farming should have been minimized. Government-backed wheat programs forced farmers to use groundwater aggressively, pumping from aquifers that took thousands of years to fill. These aquifers collapsed, the land above them started sinking, cracks opened across the countryside. In some places the ground dropped more than half a meter per year. Iran became one of the fastest sinking nations in the world, all because of groundwater abuse. And once an aquifer collapses, it never comes back. It is a permanent death. But the worst blow came from climate change. Iran is one of the world's fastest heating regions. More heat means more evaporation. Rain cycles changed. Snowfall in the Zagros Mountains decreased drastically. And those mountains feed Tehran's main water supply. Rivers that relied on snowmelt had less water every year. Dams built in the 1980s and 1990s, once overflowing, now sit nearly empty. Tehran's main reservoirs have lost tens of billions of cubic meters of water. As the climate warmed, dust storms became stronger. Rainfall weakened, temperatures spiked. Iran entered its longest drought cycle in 50 years. And when the skies stopped giving water, Tehran had nothing left to fall back on. The city's consumption habits didn't change. The leaks in its underground pipes weren't fixed. The illegal wells continued to drain the last drops. And the population kept growing. Tehran was heading toward disaster, and nobody could stop it. Today, the crisis is real. Many Tehran neighborhoods receive water only at certain hours of the day. In poorer districts, people fill tanks and buckets because they don't know if the taps will work later. In some suburbs, the water is so low pressure that it can't reach upper floors of apartments. Tanker trucks have become lifelines. And behind all this pressure stands a terrifying number, 10 million people, who depend on a shrinking supply. This crisis is not just about empty taps. It's about collapsing stability. When water runs out, society trembles. Iran has already seen protests from farmers in Isfahan, villagers in Khuzestan, and citizens in Yazd. The fear now is that Tehran could face the same fate. A city of millions cannot simply wait for water. When the taps stop, everything stops. Transport, hospitals, electricity, food production, sewage systems, cooling systems, and basic human survival. Experts now warn of a scenario called Zero Day, the moment when demand becomes greater than available water. Tehran is closer to this point than ever. Satellite images reveal shrinking reservoirs. Government reports quietly admit water scarcity. Hydrologists say aquifers near Tehran are collapsing at dangerous speed. And climate projections show the region heating even more in coming decades. But how did Tehran, once known as a city of gardens, fountains, and beautiful flowing water channels, reach this point? Why did leaders ignore the warnings? Why were dams built without planning for future climate? Why were water-intensive crops encouraged in deserts? Why were aging pipelines allowed to leak billions of liters every year? These unanswered questions shape the frustration inside Iran today. Tehran's crisis is not just mismanagement, it is the perfect storm. Climate change intensified the drought. Poor planning magnified the impact. Rapid population growth increased demand. Agriculture drained aquifers. Pollution made water less usable, and political pressure made it difficult for experts to speak openly. All of these factors combined created a ticking time bomb. Right now, the biggest threat is time. Tehran's water supply could still survive if drastic measures are taken: major investment in desalination plants, banning wasteful crops, repairing pipelines, managing groundwater scientifically, and upgrading the water grid for the 21st century. But these solutions take years, not months, and Tehran doesn't have years. People now talk about internal migration, millions moving away from Tehran one day, because the city simply cannot sustain life. That sounds impossible, but consider this. Lakes are gone, rivers dried, wells empty, aquifers dead, dams shrinking, snowmelt weakened, pollution rising, temperatures soaring, and consumption still increasing. There is only one direction this crisis is heading unless something changes fast. Many experts say Iran is entering its survival mode, a phase where managing water becomes more important than politics, a phase where technology, conservation, and emergency planning must all come together before the situation becomes irreversible. Tehran's fate will depend on what decisions are made today, not next year, not next decade, today. Tehran may still avoid complete collapse, but only if the truth is acknowledged and the system is rebuilt with honesty and urgency. The world has seen cities collapse under water shortages: Cape Town, Chennai, Sao Paulo. But Tehran's scale is far larger and far more dangerous. If a city of 10 million people faces Zero Day, the world will witness one of the biggest humanitarian crises of the 21st century. The story of Tehran's water disaster is a warning for countries everywhere. You can't fight nature. You can't pump aquifers forever. You can't ignore drought signals, and you can't pretend that rivers will return on their own. Tehran stands as a lesson, a symbol, and a reminder that once water disappears, civilization